如果中国有朝一日变了颜色，变成一个超级大国，也在世界上称王称霸，就应当揭露它，反对它，并且同中国人民一道打倒它。
中外领导人在联合国大会的发言。
Secretary General, fellow delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we come together at a crossroad between war and peace, between disorder and integration, between fear and hope. Around the globe, there are signposts of progress. The shadow of world war that existed at the founding of this institution has been lifted. The prospect of war between major powers reduced. The ranks of member states has more than tripled, and more people live under governments they elected. Hundreds of millions of human beings have been freed from the prison of poverty, with the proportion of those living in extreme poverty cut in half. The world economy continues to strengthen after the worst financial crisis of our lives. Today, whether you live in downtown Manhattan or in my grandmother's village more than 200 miles from Nairobi, you can hold in your hand more information than the world's greatest libraries.
If it is my privilege here today to take the floor before you, I know to whom I owe that privilege. I owe that privilege to all of those who, just over 70 years ago, rose up against the barbaric regime that had seized my country, France. I owe it to those nations that heard our cry of resistance and who from America, Africa, Oceania and Asia sent their sons and daughters to our aid. They did not all know very much about France, but they knew that were France to be defeated, this would also be the defeat for the ideals that they shared with us, of which they were proud and for which they were ready to give their lives. They knew that their freedom and their values depended upon the freedom of other women and of other men who lived thousands of kilometers away from them. I also owe that privilege to those who, once the war had ended, dared to take the path of reconciliation and to build a new international order. Those who, like René Cassin, understood that human rights lay at the heart of international legitimacy. Those who tried guilty, gave succor to the victims, made amends for the wrongs. Those who believed that the values that this war had flouted had to be restored.
In mitigating local crises. This enormous potential and expertise of the UN is relevant and serves as a solid basis for moving ahead. After all, just like any other international organisation or regional entity, the UN should not grow stiff, but evolve in accordance with the dynamics of the 21st century and consistently adapt to the realia of the modern world that is indeed becoming more complicated, multipolar and multidimensional. The current changes certainly have an effect on the principal UN body, the Security Council, as well as on the debate concerning the approaches to its reform. Our thinking is that the Security Council should be more inclusive of the interests of all countries, as well as the diversity of their positions, base its work on the principle of the broadest possible consensus among states, and, at the same time, continue to serve as the cornerstone of global governance, which cannot be achieved unless the permanent members of the Security Council retain their veto power. Such a right pertaining to the 5 nuclear powers, the victors of the Second World War, remains indicative of the actual military and political balance to this day. Most importantly, it is an essential and unique...
Mr. Secretary General, Mr. President, world leaders, and distinguished delegates, welcome to New York. It is a profound honor to stand here in my home city as a representative of the American people to address the people of the world. As millions of our citizens continue to suffer the effects of the devastating hurricanes that have struck our country, I want to begin by expressing my appreciation to every leader in this room who has offered assistance and aid. The American people are strong and resilient, and they will emerge from these hardships more determined than ever before. Fortunately, the United States has done very well since Election Day last November 8th. The stock market is at an all-time high, a record. Unemployment is at its lowest level in 16 years, and because of our regulatory and other reforms, we have more people working in the United States today than ever before.
For the UN, which has now come 3/4 of a century since its founding, structural reform, especially that of the Security Council, is absolutely imperative. We aim for the early realization of such reform. In addition, Japan is standing in the 2022 election. By once again receiving the support of numerous countries, we wish to serve as a non-permanent member of the Security Council and make our best efforts towards the further realization of the principles of the UN. I ask for your ardent support in this. In Japan, a new emperor has succeeded to the imperial throne, and the ceremony for His Majesty to declare this fact to both domestic and international audiences near at hand on October 22. Heads of state and government and top leaders from approximately 200 nations and the international organizations will attend, and there is no greater joy than that of the well-wishing extended to us upon the start of the emperor's new era. The Japanese people regard this as an unparalleled.
中国现在不是，将来也不做超级大国。如果中国有朝一日变了颜色，变成一个超级大国，也在世界上称王称霸，到处欺负人家、侵略人家、剥削人家，那么世界人民就应当给中国戴上一顶社会帝国主义的帽子，就应当揭露它、反对它，并且同中国人民一道打倒它。正如毛泽东主席所阐明的那样，新的世界大战的危险依然存在。各国人民必须有所准备，但是当前世界的主要危险、主要倾向是革命。两个超级大国为自己设立了对立面，他们以大欺小，以强凌弱，以富压贫，激起了第三世界和全世界人民的强烈反感。当前，第三世界国家和人民反殖、反帝、反霸斗争的一个极其重要的方面。大家知道，在过去几个世纪里，殖民主义和帝国主义对亚非拉人民进行了肆无忌惮的奴役和掠夺，对发展中国家发展问题所散布的一切悲观失望、无所作为的论调，都是毫无根据的、别有用心的。我们说的自力更生，就是主要依靠本国人民的力量和智慧，掌握本国的经济命脉，充分利用本国的资源，努力增加粮食生产，有计划逐步地发展本国的民族经济， 独立自主自力更生。国家之间的政治和经济关系都应当建立在互相尊重主权和领土完整、互不侵犯、互不干涉内政、平等互利、和平共处5项原则的基础上。我们反对任何国家违背这些原则，在任何地区建立霸权和势力范围。